Due to our work features, we visit a lot of different factories that produce different sorts of tea. In Yunnan, we've already counted much more than 200–300 various suppliers, producers, farmers. Each one has a particular business. Some collect raw material and send it to us for processing. Others do the full production cycle with their own tea gardens. Some only roast Shu Pu'ers, others only ferment shu or only press tea cakes. There are the factories that do everything, very different. Today, we arrived at the factory that produces mostly Shu Pu'ers, but they also have a workshop for pressing tea cakes. We make some of our products here. They also make some customized tea here. For example, now I'm tasting shu that was fermented especially for us, because Shu Pu'er has a feature. Usually not many people drink Shu Pu'er in Yunnan, as I said. That's why, for Shu Pu'er, either summer or autumn raw material is used, or late spring harvest, or it can be the machine harvest, or not attentive manual harvest, when large stalks are taken. The attitude proving that shu is something secondary here. That's why many tea connoisseurs slowly go away from shu, because not much of a good high-quality shu is produced. They have this attitude from the beginning. So we also decided to take part, like some farmers who like qualitative Shu Pu'er. They choose good raw material and say, let's ferment this. People ferment even gu shu. We saw this in Laobanjan. We also choose the raw material. Shihao number 10, this is a new sort, Xingpingzhong. It was fermented in autumn, we already ordered it. Now the tea is ready, we drink the finished product. It is pretty good, I think. Here is the tea, Wai Guang, so to say. It is like Gongting but bigger, or Xiao Jingya, small golden buds. But this raw material has no name, because as far as I know, they didn't produce mass tea from it, didn't ferment it. Because there is not much of it, and generally green and red tea is made of it. They didn't make shu for some reason, and we decided to try, and it was really good. We are very glad, because I took part in choosing, conceived the idea, and it was carried out. Now we'll have a look at sorting of raw material. By the way, they sort not this raw material, another heap, duiliao. But this particular factory performs fermentation and initial preparation of Shu Pu'er. We came to the factory producing pu'er. Here they make shu, sheng pu'er, press cakes, do the fa jiao stage. Right now we cut the stage when they sort the big amount of duiliao. Duiliao is the raw material that appears after production of Shu Pu'er. Dui means a heap. Wadui is the one that underwent the wadui stage. Dui is a heap, liao is a raw material. They put duiliao in big sacks, where everything is mixed. You can see stalks, balls that are known as lao chato or dragon's head. Bud and leaf raw materials, absolutely everything. In order to sort it all out, taking into consideration that the heaps are quite sticky, they need to slightly crumble them, but not much. Not press, but divide, shake it up, and sort it out by categories. There are the special machine tools for that. They are very different, for example, laser sorters. This equipment is old enough, but it works reliably. Here they perform the sorting into 4 grades. a necessary device at every factory producing something of this kind. In a workshop where there is much dust that constantly rises, all the workers wear very dense masks. Not simple hygienic, but really dense, because the dust gets into the airways. If you breathe too long, it is not very healthy and it's difficult, you'll sneeze. So they necessarily put on the masks. Apart from that, the premise is well ventilated. There are ventilators at the top, a big ventilation shaft, a part of the wall with the ventilating holes. Much attention is paid to this. And such big ventilators, of course. As a result, there are 4 fractions of raw material, and the 5th one is dust. Usually it also contains fine broken leaves apart from dust. They reject even large fraction, which is not dust. It is usually used for production of Puer Cha or when somebody orders dust for tea bags or other purpose. As a result, they have 4 main fractions labeled by numbers. This one is called Jiuzi, or the 9th number. This is Jiuzi, probably, the 7th. It's the 5th or maybe also the 7th. Afterwards they divide them, there are no any strict rules, but the size of stalk, amount of buds, leaf size is important. As a rule, the fraction of leaves is assessed by these criteria. And here is the machine sifting leaves after the initial sifting of duiliao, the raw material from the hips. Particularly in this phase, the stalks and other unsuitable pieces are filtered. In that bag, normal tea is poured. And here there are 2 fractions of stalks because they are different in weight. Right here there is vibration, and they jump higher because they are lighter. And so they are rejected. But this is not the end. After that goes the final stage of manual processing, when all unnecessary pieces are picked away. The final stage of processing, when the raw material passed through 2 machine sortings, is the hands, of course. Because in any case there are some unfit pieces, sticks. All of them are necessarily removed by hands, at least at good factories like this. Though it is quite simple and old and has a long history, so it is quite respectful in small circles. Here they have the very careful approach to choosing raw material. The result depends on the initial raw material. Because if the summer harvest was used, or the raw material with low tips or buds content, then it will be not expensive pu'er. At any rate, the sorting goes for tea of any quality equally, 3 stages. Of course, the modern sorting machines, including laser ones and many others, save time. But in terms of quality, if there is no manual processing, no a single machine tool can deal with it 100% perfectly. That is why even after laser sorting or other devices, the manual sorting necessarily takes place, to be sure that the ready tea corresponds the grade and has no waste. Work is work, but the lunch is on time. At 11 exactly, or 10 minutes to 11 to be exact, the machine tool is switched off, the workers go to have a meal. Food is a sacred thing for Chinese. They necessarily eat, have a rest, and then can work until late night, until the next lunch break. But there are the factories that work not so strictly in terms of meal schedule, and they often stay and work late depending on the conditions on which the workers agreed to work. They have some peculiarities. If they are paid on piecework basis for the amount of processed raw material or the number of work pieces, they can get a few hours of overtime and work until night. But right here they are paid hourly rate. The workers stopped the machine tool and went to eat. Indeed, many people who travel to China or see videos, or tourists who travel with us, very different people. They see something without knowing it and think that it's quite dirty in China. In reality, you come to to factories and see that everything is good, and what seems to be dirt is the tea dust. There is no way to avoid it, and it covers everything in many layers. Surely it is removed, swept away, but it is a necessary part of production process. So they all wear masks, and everything is under the thin yellow layer, especially where the Shu Puer is sorted. It is very noticeable, the Shu fur, which rises essentially from the buds. This is how duiliao looks like, the raw material from the heap which was not sorted at all. If you look attentively, you can see the tea head that we call dragon heads, a big number of stalks that are rejected, and a particular amount of usual waste like a piece of bag to sort out, buds that can be sorted like dadzinya and xiaodzinya, golden buds, big buds, small buds is gongting, the palace puer. Leaf raw material in different blends can have the grades from yizi to jiuzi, from the first level to the 9th level, very different. By the way, the famous blends of Moychay factory often have the 7th or 8th grade, not very high level. But still, the mastery of some good technologists can make a tasty tea from the material of a not very high grade. They appreciate this on this factory. The main work in the process of fermentation is certainly the work of the technologist, who controls fa jiao, process of fermentation, and how the leaf is processed. And then, if they have good processing and good sorting, they will have a good tea. At every factory which has its history, there is necessarily a warehouse with various artifacts that are not in use for a long time. The pieces of pressing machines, the molds of bricks, the wooden molds with the famous scene with the horses that are used for big gift cakes of puer that they don't usually drink and use just like souvenirs. Today, nobody uses them, but they still lay here. In some more old factories that are not upgraded, you can see this in work. But ordinarily, it is a museum antiquity, so to say. By the way, often in the factory showrooms you can find something like this. Like this unbelievable 3 kilos cake of Shu Puer that was made more than 10 years ago. It was made absolutely ikashu. The raw material was gathered from one big old tea tree, and 3 kilos of tea were produced. Evidently the tree was from here, from Kunlunshan, because it is huge. To get so much of ready tea, you need at least 15 or 14 kilos of raw material. Naturally, when I see stuff like this, traditionally I want to possess it. Because it is only one, because it is old and very cool shan. I can see this from the appearance, and I broke a few leaves and tasted. And also because it is rarity, there is nothing like this. But the owners naturally said, no, I don't sell it. We'll gradually discuss it with him. Maybe the next year or a year later we'll have a chance to have it. It's a cool product. I like to find such things. The lady, the factory owner's friend, tells that when they went to Kunlunshan, the farmers and peasants showed them this stone. This is a real petrified ancient tea leaf. When it happened, nobody knows. There are inclusions and prints of leaves from other trees, but they say that the structure of the leaf resembles the tea leaf. I even see it myself, that it resembles a tea leaf. If it is true, this can be probably the most ancient evidence that the tea tree existed in the prehistoric period.